Hey, what's up? I'm Ara, aka I Eat Zebra, and welcome back to the channel. Season 10 of American Horror Story just wrapped its 10th season. If you haven't had a chance to check out the finale after show, I'll link it in the description below and in the little icon in the corner up there somewhere. In my last video, I shared my top 10 favorite AHS characters, and I figured I would rank the 10 seasons of AHS in my personal favorite order. So let's get to it. At number 10, Cult. I know this is probably going to shock a lot of people with this being placed in this spot, but hear me out before you take my AHS credentials away. For the record, the only reason this is ranked so low on my personal favorites list is pretty simple. For one, I don't like freaky ass clowns, so getting through the pilot was almost impossible. Secondly, this season aired during the first year of Trumpito being in office, and as an Afro-Latino woman with roots in Honduras, married to a Haitian man with a Haitian child, you can do the math to figure out why I don't support or condone that man. So watching someone, especially Evan Peters, reflect that what was happening in real time, it was just a bit too much for me to handle personally, and there's a lot of parts of the season I have to skip because I just can't watch it, honestly. And it's really uncomfortable. So, yeah, moving on. Number 9, Roanoke. Now, you probably would have assumed this would have been the number 10 spot, which is fair. The premise of the season was fun at first, and I enjoyed the earlier parts of it. However, the back half of the season was just a little sus to me at best. The finale felt disjointed and like they were trying to cram every and any reality TV show trope in there. However, some highlights of the season to me were Kathy Bates as the Butcher, Cricket, and the fact I didn't realize Finn Wittrock and Frances Conroy were the Polks. So the makeup, hair, and costuming departments really did their thing on that part. Number 8, Apocalypse. I love to rewatch this season more than most, but the one thing this season relies on heavily is nostalgia. The nostalgia of reuniting with past characters from Coven, Murder House, and Hotel was great, and I love the interconnectivity between the seasons. Billy Porter as Behold was a wonderful addition to the cast, and I hope he returns for another season. The last 15 minutes of the season is what really brought this down in my rankings. Mallory time traveling and undoing essentially everything that happened this season made it all pointless. Madison and Tate's redemption arcs, Misty Day being saved from purgatory, Constance accepting how futile her efforts to change her grandson and ultimately deciding to reunite with her kids, all goes away in the blink of an eye and the hitting of the Antichrist with SUV. So, what was the point? The best thing was Queenie being spared from her fate in Hotel. The one thing I don't like about the time travel trope is the loss of character development, which is why I have this so low on my list. Number 7, Double Feature. I know people are probably scratching their heads at this, but let's get to it. So the first half of Red Tide, minus the final 20 minutes, is some of the best of AHS I have ever seen. The writing was phenomenal. They were really focused on the plot lines and not getting too far ahead of themselves. The performances from all of the cast were top-notch. Ryan Kira Armstrong, who played Alma, was an absolute standout for me, especially as a child actor. Her talent is awe-inspiring, and I'm excited to see where her career goes from here. Macaulay Culkin was another excellent addition to the cast as Mickey, and I truly hope they bring him back in the future. Even though I hated the last 20 minutes of the finale of Red Tide, unlike Apocalypse, they didn't just erase the entire story they told. Part 2, however, needed more episodes in my opinion, or if they simply just had the plot points that were happening in the past in black and white, that would have just been perfect for me because I found those to be enjoyable. The actors in the flashback scenes were all seasoned and clearly knew what they were doing. However, the actors for the present day were not up to par. To me, it was a combination of writing and performances for the present day scenes, and the ending felt rushed. And a lot of what happened in part 2 could have been cut out and just made into an American Horror Stories episode. However, the only reason this is above Apocalypse is just due to how strong the beginning of part 1 was. Number 6, 1984. I love 1984. It is so campy and fun to watch. The season feels like a movie series with it being split between an original slasher film and its sequel. The finale feels like an epilogue of sorts, but they did wrap the season pretty well, all things considered. The story was focused for the most part without too many loose ends. I loved the cast. They seemed like they were truly enjoying themselves while shooting. My biggest gripe with the season is a continuity issue with Richard Ramirez and how we left off with him in Hotel. I would have preferred if they just used a different serial killer or made one up exclusively for the show as an homage to Ramirez. Other than that, the season feels like a complete in return to the old AHS. Number 5, Hotel. I enjoy watching the season, and with Double Feature, I had rewatched it a few times to prep for the season because silly me thought vampires would be involved with the other bloodsuckers. Anyways, I think the Lowe family as the main focus of the season falls really flat to me, which is one of my biggest gripes with it. Their family wasn't really that likable at all. Alex was obnoxious and irresponsible as fuck. Like, you legit abandoned your daughter and passed a blood curse to a kid with measles that ended up resulting in so many unnecessary deaths. Anyways, the child actors they had in this season were really bad, to say the least. Finding talented child actors is really hard, and there were one too many bad ones and no standouts to make up for it. I will say, though, some of my favorite performances in this season are Dennis O'Hare's Liz Taylor, Sarah Paulson and Evan, per usual, and Lady Gaga joining the cast as the Countess. She did a wonderful, wonderful job. The music in this season also is a major highlight. Number 4, Murder House. Again, I'm here to shock you all. I love Murder House, and honestly, I think just coming off the heels of American Horror Stories, if I ever see that house again, I'm honestly going to vomit. Unless it's for the final season, I may feel a little differently, but this season being the first one, I think a lot of the actors had some growing pains to work out, which is why this and my next choice were really hard to make, as I believe everyone was on their A game in that, but I'll get to that in a bit. Murder House is what made me and a lot of viewers fall in love with the series, and the only reason it's in this spot is solely based on the performances, with the exception of Jessica Lange because she is phenomenal at everything. Number 3, Freak Show. I think I'm in the small minority of the fandom that loves this season. I honestly think that the cast during this season all delivered some of their strongest performances to date. I could go on praising them all, but Finn Wittrock's Dandy Mott and Sarah Paulson as Bet and Dot Tadler were incredible. I loved the way the season ended, and majority of the major plot lines were resolved. The musical numbers were a pleasure to watch. I was a theater kid, so growing up, I love musicals, and, I'm a sucker for a great musical number. And the diversity and inclusivity of the cast was fantastic to see, as other shows may have just had the cast in some form of costuming, like they did for Kathy Bates, Angela Bassett, Evan Peters, etc. But the main reason I ranked this higher than Murder House was based on the acting performances. But figure by the 4th season, the growing pains are predominantly over, and the cast and crew are used to working with each other and have developed their skill, which is why I have this at my number 3 spot. Number 2, Coven. Even though the majority of my favorite characters are from Coven, it is my number 2. I love the cast and characters of Coven. Even the worst characters, besides Lalaurie, are able to garner a wee bit of sympathy from me. I love the witches, and the fact we got more of them in Apocalypse is the only reason I watch it so much, to be honest. I will say some of the storylines and plots do go a little unresolved, but it's AHS, so what can you expect, really? I would love a spin-off series about the Coven because there's so much story left to tell, and I believe the world building, if you will, in this season is some of the strongest in AHS, period. Even though I love my witch bitches, they weren't able to come out on top. So with that being said, number 1, Asylum. This should come as no surprise that Asylum is my number 1, as I've said it in a few other videos. Asylum has everything. The acting is great, special guests are incredible, the writing was strong. Despite the alien thing we got to circle back to, sort of, in season 10, I'll let it slide a little bit. Asylum besides Coven are the seasons I rewatch the most. The story for Asylum feels more high stakes at times, and I love the twist when we find out the real identity of Bloodyface. The cast all showed up and showed out, with James Cromwell even taking home an Emmy for his performance as Dr. Arden. I love the way each of the characters' stories develop throughout the seasons, with my favorites being Lana and Sister Jude, sort of going on reversed arcs. With Lana, she starts off as an optimistic, bright-eyed reporter and slowly grows more jaded and selfish as the season progresses. With Sister Jude, she starts off as a sadistic nun, and after going through the same torture she put others through, her life turns around after she moves in with Kit and his children, warming up to be this loving grandmother figure by the end, welcoming death with open arms. There's so much more I could say about this season and why it's great, but we'd be going on forever. Well, that wraps up my American Horror Story season ranking list. How would you rank the seasons? Let me know in the comments down below. If you're a fan of true crime and unsolved, unexplained, and unanswered mysteries, check out my new podcast, Preposterous AF, available wherever you listen to podcasts. New episodes drop every Monday. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for future uploads. See you next time. Bye!